Hello, everybody, and welcome to week one of MGMT576. This is a great course. We're going to study a little bit about project management in practice, which is exciting, but mostly we're going to focus, especially in the discussions, on management and leadership as it applies to project management, the way you can work through the issues you find in projects, applying the tools and techniques that you learn in the PMBOK guide, right? So it's a great course focusing on management and leadership in project management. Because look at this slide. These are the 49 processes in the PMBOK guide edition 6, right? Currently. And so on the left we have the initiating process group, then the big box and the two processes inside of it. Then you have the big box in the middle, which is the planning process group. And look at all the processes that you have to integrate. In fact, in each of these slides, your role is the yellow box. So on the left, 4.1, that's you, and that's how you manage the processes in the initiating process group. In planning, you use process 4.2 to manage all of the other processes and synchronize them and make them align, right? You're using the project management plan process to organize, synchronize, and align your project plan starting from scratch. And then, of course, on the far right at the bottom, you have the executing process group. And your two processes are 4.3 and 4.4, but on the left you have controlling process group. And you're doing executing and controlling at the same time. And your processes there are 4.5 and 4.6, again in yellow. And you're using your processes to manage all the other processes around you. So it's really dynamic, it's extensive, but it's doable. And that's why we're going to focus on management and leadership throughout this course. So the book really does lay out at the beginning in chapter 1 on page 4 this kind of differentiation between the type of work on the left, how a project manager does it, and general management. You can see down in the center column, project management is unique, because a general manager doesn't have to start from scratch and integrate all those processes we just looked at. It's just day-to-day running and managing activities. So we become adept at adapting to change, right? Whether it's traditional project management or agile, change is part of our focus. Our budgeting becomes critical because every project, by definition, is unique. So it's never really been done before. It may be similar to another project that we've done recently, but it's different. The context is different, the time is different, the stakeholders change, the budget is different, right? Experts change, etc. And so we have to sequence activities, which means starting from scratch, organizing all of those processes we saw on the last slide. The only thing I really disagreed with the book is that it talks about project management as informal. I see it as not informal. I see it as well-defined but evolving. So the term we use in project management is progressive elaboration. As we learn more, we elaborate, we detail it out. So I don't believe it's informal. I believe the better term would be progressively elaborated there, and that's why I highlighted that term, because we know the PMBOK guide says of itself, it's a framework. I can't start on page 1 of the PMBOK guide, go to page 800 and have a successful project. I have to adapt it to all those 49 processes in the last slide to my project needs. So it's not informal, but it starts out challenging, and we have to progressively elaborate it. And the PMBOK guide's framework guides us to that detailed approach. So, and the challenge is, every project we do is looking to derive business value, right? Sometimes it's tangible, sometimes it's intangible. But basically, we're looking to change the current state in the bottom left to some future state. So your project is always tied to the corporate strategy, right? And it's one of the things we want to know. What's the corporate strategy? It's also one of the reasons we want to make sure that we capture the business case and any benefits that the company wants out of it. And of course, if any statements of work have been predefined, right? As we modify our corporate objectives from the current state to the future state. So general management is about dividing up work. It's about having the authority to do work. There's a tie to responsibility and discipline, unity of command and purpose and direction, right? It's optimization of the resource usage. Having clear and consistent and a regular pattern of communications, fair treatment, fair pay. We agree with all that, right? And this is a very dynamic world, though, for a project manager, which is on the right, which has to balance this new initiative, right, as we modify the current state to a future state. And so you have power that you should use as a project manager, and I abbreviate it as CLIP, and you can see it around the triangle: competence, leadership, influence, power, and politics. And you incorporate all of that into your mix, and it provides you a certain sense of management power along the way, right? In fact, on this slide, I relate your power in CLIP, competence, leadership, influence, power, and politics as a type of fire, right? So to have a fire, I have to have a fuel, I have to have a heat source, and I have to have oxygen. Otherwise, you will not have a fire, right? Which keeps you warm, cooks food, makes everybody happier, right? Well, the fire for you is centered around this CLIP, and you need to incorporate those into your project work to be successful. It's part of your power. It helps you to understand your own and others' authority, responsibility, and accountability. And you want to keep those in balance. You don't want more accountability than you have authority to support, right? Otherwise, the fire doesn't work. So you want to balance authority, responsibility, and accountability by using CLIP along the way. But you're not on your own. The organization is also going to influence you along the way. And so more on that in a minute. So you are, in addition to being a manager, you are a leader, right? And you lead the team to achieve these objectives. That's what makes you responsible. But you're not doing it alone. Usually it's a cross-functional organization, which the book points out on page 4 when it talks about project management. It says that the location of work crosses organizational units. So you've got to work with a functional manager or an operations manager or a marketing manager, etc., right? And you'll borrow people from those organizations. It's called a matrix organization. We'll talk about that in the following weeks. So you may be involved at the project initiation. We hope so. We hope that the C-suite, the leadership of the company, the CEO, the COO, hand you those business documents and the benefits management plan, the benefits they expect to get from the project. And then you will start to build your project charter, which is going to help you then develop your project plan, right, in this progressive elaboration, right, as you get more detailed over time as you clarify the direction you're going. So you want to be involved early. To not be involved early is a mistake. It does happen. And if I'm late to a project, say I was hired after project initiating began, the first things I'm going to ask for, can I see the benefits management plan? Can I see the business case? Can I see the charter you've developed, right? That'll help catch me up to speed. Because you're trying to work, you're jumping into this sphere of influence, right? Where you've got to develop these top relationships and superior communication skills, and of course, always bring a great attitude. Now, the sphere of influence I'm talking about looks like this, and this is really why you'll spend a lot of your time in negotiating, which is covered on page 5 and 6 of the book. So you have this sphere of influence where you've got to use your interpersonal skills, your soft skills, to communicate at various levels. At the very bottom center, you'll communicate with within a small group. Then you'll have to communicate with the team. PPP stands for project, program, or portfolio managers, right? Other managers, resource managers. Then above that, the sponsor owns your money for your budget. It's one of those senior leaders, right? Maybe a governing body or an executive steering committee. And outside of that, you've got to communicate with suppliers, vendors, end users, stakeholders, etc. So it's all about the response. Your responsibility is partly incorporating that team and creating relationships that will allow you to collect requirements, collect risks, collect constraints, collect assumptions, and build them into a project plan, right? And so you have 3 influences that the PMBOK guide likes to talk about: EEFs, OPAs, and organizational systems. Now in EEF, you can see on the left side, it comes in 2 forms, external and internal, and on the right side you have OPAs, which are processes, policies, and procedures, and corporate knowledge base. I've got 2 slides on those. And EEF are largely things that impact your project, but are outside your project control, right? That's an EEF. And I give some examples here of internal and external. Now, an OPA are things internal, but yet are meant to help you in your project. So one would be processes, policies, and procedures, right? These are predetermined. You can modify them, get approval first, but they're useful. They're assets to you, and that's why I highlight the word assets in organizational process assets. But don't forget about number 2, corporate knowledge base, right? Which is historical information, right? There might be a similar project on the shelf you could review. What about lessons learned from a lessons learned file system? What about previous configuration management or financial data, right? You can use those. Those are organizational process assets. Now, you don't forget every company has some governance, right? So you want to consider that in your management and leadership approach. And governance is that structural arrangement that the company lays down that influences behavior, right? An organizational chart is part of governance. Duty titles in a big company are part of governance. Pay ranges and frames. And when you can take vacation or time off. This is all part of governance and has to be built into your project effort. So the governance framework is how authority gets exercised, including your own. Now, some of your authority will be exercised in the project charter. So we start then into the role of the project manager, and then I'll take a quick break, and we'll come back for part 2 this week. But the role of the project manager is to incorporate the processes, the inputs, tools, and techniques and outputs of the PMBOK guide, to develop them and to proactively interact with others, other project managers, your sponsor, your team, to progressively elaborate your project detail, right? So you're an advocate, you play an advocacy role, and you will incorporate tacit and explicit knowledge transfers along the way. And of course, it's important to stay up to date with current trends. We'll take a short break, come on back, and finish up week 1.